I guess we'll go on to the community discussion. We moved this earlier in the week. We thought we'd get more feedback from the community. So I've started just some starter topics that you may be interested in. So in terms of what we've been doing internally at the HDF Group, in trying to move PRs and issues and forum questions, we now have a sustainable engineer of the week cycles through the engineering staff, and they're responsible for keeping the internal and the external PRs from the community moving forward. So they don't just sit there and there's no feedback for them. They just, I mean, people work hard on their PRs and they want to see them incorporated into the library. So that's where we're trying to move that along. We also make sure that there's no forum posts that don't get answered. So at least there's one answer to every forum post. And we also monitor the CI that we do internally to make sure that what we're introducing to the library doesn't break the current development. Some challenges that we have internally, though, is that when we review PRs for basically non-HDF group type projects, is they fall under charitable time commitments. So there is a delicate balancing act between what we can supply feedback to the community and our own commitments that the HDF has. So any feedback on terms of how we're doing with the PRs or issues or the forum? Does anyone want to bring up any topics about that? Going well then? I'll take that as a yes.
I have some comments too.
Go ahead.
First, I'm a frequent beneficiary, and so I really appreciate people reviewing the PRs I toss in there. However, I also donate my time to reviewing everyone else's PRs. It's not a one-way street. So if we can get more people in the community to engage in other people's PRs, don't rely just on the HDF group making comments on your code. Let the PR, please, to be more. And also look at the other what's happening. Right? If you care about what's happening inside the library, think about it, making comments, contribute, become part of that.
Yeah, I think part of it is that on GitHub, I think you have to be a member or to be able to be selected to review, right? So
for that, but anyone can just jump in with a comment.
Right, but if you want to have a specific person that you want to have maybe outside the HDF group, it's hard to tag that person to review that PR because they have to be. Yeah. But yeah, we welcome anybody to review PRs.
Okay.
Yeah, Shane. Any other comments about? Okay. So then it kind of talked about releases. What we've done to kind of move releases along is we started training more of the staff members about how to, in the process of doing a release. And as Dana mentioned, we try to do more, we try to automate some of the tasks that now were manual. So hopefully we're starting to, the goal is to have a regular cadence of releases. And I think we've accomplished that for the most part. Dana's had the roadmap now. Are there any other comments about releases, things you don't like, things you'd like to see? Has it been a big deal to drop support in your experience for the older version of HDF 5? Was it a burden or was it still, it was pretty transparent?
Nice. There was like this periodically. People could pay to say, I care, right? And therefore keep this branch alive. And it's just growing so other people do this, right?
Enterprise release.
Oh yeah, that's what the long-term support thing is. I'm gonna settle on this thing. I want security patches and bug fixed, but I'm gonna settle with this one for a while.
Dana says the room is a bit echoey, so it's hard to understand what people are saying. Yeah, it would be nice to have Fortran reviewers. There's Fortran's, it's still out there, and if anybody knows Fortran and wants to review PRs, more than welcome. Anything else on releases?
Yeah, I have a question. Are people going to be sad if I drop Auto Tools support in HDF 5 2.0?
I don't see any pitchforks, these lighting torches yet.
Because a lot of other projects are doing that, and it's not easy to support two build systems, especially when testing gets complicated.
Just as a curiosity, how many people, when they build HDF5, are using CMake? Raise your hand. And Auto Tools? Okay, about 50-50. So
I have a comment on this.
When I'm making my own projects, I always like to use CMake because like it's easy to make. But when I'm compiling someone else's project, I always prefer Auto Tools because it's easy to work with. I don't know why.
Hi there. I'm just wondering, can you expand on why it's difficult to support both? What type of effort it takes?
Okay, I have an example. So recently, GitHub updated something, and the way that we detect and use, what was it, float 128 or no, int 128, but it was one of the GNU specific types broke. So I had to go in and fix that, and I had to fix it twice because Fortran runs programs to see how stuff works, and that was all broken. So I had to fix the problem twice, and it took twice as long. It was really annoying. So these things, oftentimes they're not that big of a deal. If you're just adding, a unit type test that you've concocted, that's really easy. You just add it to the list of programs, no problem. It's zero extra support. But whenever we do anything that's a bit more complicated than that, it adds complexity and time. I'm sure you could probably ask Jordan about having to support CMake and the Auto Tools for Float 16. I bet that was no fun. So
it was extremely complicated.
Yes. So there are things where it's like that is a non-zero cost. And so if we can ditch the Auto Tools, and then we also, it makes the code base more complicated. Not really the code base, but the build system more complicated because we try to make things use common files and things for building and configuring. And there's a bunch of handstands we have to do for that. And if we could get rid of those handstands, like if you look at how we do warning stuff, there's some common warning files and things like that we parse. And so there's a bunch of stuff that we do. And it's hard to keep them in sync, right? Witness HDF4 having two different library names depending on what you build with, right? So it's an opportunity for pain. And I'd like to get rid of it if we can.
I was going to say, the trip changed over recently. It's been really a pain, but because I had to do all the special stuff and revise everything for the Auto Tools, and then go back to it again. It was an extra 20 or 30 hours of work to get everything sorted out.
And I would also say this, that when people go in and change that stuff, usually they're way better at using one system than the other. And so you wind up with like a high quality fix for one build system and kind of a mediocre quality fix for the other system. And that's also kind of a problem. So I would just rather get rid of the Auto Tools. Everybody's a CMake expert now. That's just the way the world works. It'd be way easier.
I understand that, but what essentially I'm hearing now, and people may disagree with me, that you're making your life easier, but not users who build this in different
Right. I understand. And that's...
you have to reach too much wider community to make that decision. Even here it was split 50-50, right? How it was, who uses CMake. But really, what should govern is use cases and vendor the community and not the convenience of the developers. So this, I completely understand the pain. And for example, this is a good example where they can appeal to community. By adding this, we need volunteers to fix CMake files, for example, or something. And get people in community trained and get help from the community. And I'm sure someone will, respond like, people who maintain packages for different Linux distributions. Have you talked to them, so on. So my view is make users priorities, makes users needs priorities, not developers need as priorities.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's a balance though, right? Like we do have to keep the lights on. But the reason that I haven't removed AutoTools support, I mean, one is that I prefer to build the AutoTools, right? So this is painful for me too if we go to CMake. But I haven't removed it because people do build with it, right? And so I don't want to alienate users. But I feel like these winds have slowly been changing. That if 5 years ago we tried to drop the AutoTools, people would have screamed. But I feel like now a lot of packages, a lot of stuff is moving more to CMake than the AutoTools. And so at some point, I'm going to ask this question. People are going to be like, yeah, we don't care. But for right now, that's 116 is not going to drop AutoTools support. So I keep asking people to see.
Along this line, and I noticed in the agenda that Scott's got, could we chat with the audience too about going up to C11? Yeah.
I think that what's going to happen is C11 is probably going to be a thing in HDF 5 2.0. Will it be a thing in 116? Maybe. I'd like to make that path as easy as possible. If we can avoid it, I'll try to do it. But if it's inevitable, then it's inevitable. I think that a lot of C11 support to me has appeared to happen a lot faster than C99. And by that, I mean basically Microsoft, right? Like Microsoft was always the holdout for C99. It took forever for them to come on board, and they're still not 100% on board. But for C11, they pretty much embraced that, except for a couple of things that we're not really using. So, or that we can engineer around, right? So I think that 2.0 will definitely have C11. Well, 1.16, yeah. Again, I'd like to make it so that it's really easy to go from 114 to 116.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a strong advocate for this 2C11, but it's really probably a 2.0, level fit.
Yeah, I think another thing that makes me feel like going to C11 won't cause as much pain is that a lot of people don't sell software anymore. You subscribe to software. And so people tend to have, like if you get Visual Studio, like we don't really have to worry about supporting ancient versions of Visual Studio anymore because it's easy to get newer ones. And there's often free versions of things. So I feel like it's less of a problem than it was in the past.
Quick struggle. Anyone here say, oh no, my community would freak out if you went to C11. You must only go back to GCC 4.7 and keep supporting C99. Good.
What is people corrected now?
What's that?
What is people corrected?
Good question.
Sorry, did you have?
Yeah, going back to the articles, and there is a lot, or maybe touching the documentation part. There are a lot of places where both of them are wrong of the articles documentation and so on. So make sure whatever you follow, clean that up, so people don't get confused. And the other one is the stack. Are you still supporting stack to make it much easier than because in NASA meeting recently, I think everybody was asking, okay, stack.
Yeah, we still support SPAC, and we actually moved from AutoTools building an HDF5 with AutoTools to CMake and SPAC. So if you build in SPAC now, you'll use CMake. So, yeah.
That's quite cool. Just the way.
Well, why don't people just use SPAC? Or
why technically proposals encourage attendees they want to compile their own code and use CMake. Like put a warning, hey, 5 questions from now, we do the technical process.
Now, what we need to do is go into the configure script, the C60 at the beginning of the audit tools configure. That's the only thing applying. While you're thinking about this, try and start up this thing a little faster.
I think we have started, some features are not available in auto tools are just CMake. So I think if you go that route, that you're only getting, for example, if you were to have subfiling, we're only going to implement subfiling if you do CMake builds. And that will kind of force people to say, well, if I want to use that feature, I'm just going to have to go to CMake. Eventually, people. Yeah, I think there's a few things that weren't backported to auto tools. Senator Jordan, I think there's one thing that wasn't back.
I'm sure there's probably several things that are out of sync between CMake and Auto Tools. As everyone else has said, it can often be pretty difficult to match them together. And I mean, my own experience, the Float 16 work took at least another 20 to 30 hours of working on the build system just to make them close to each other. So I would not be surprised if there's things missing from one or the other.
Any other discussion on that? So we'll go to documentation. This is probably one of the top concerns of the community. And all I can say is we're in the process of making big changes to it. Hopefully it's an improvement over what you see now. So just stay tuned. Is there any, I guess, about the current documentation, since you haven't seen the future ones, comments, concerns, what you should do different for documentation? What do you like to see, the new documentation?
So I've also been working with blocks and HDF5 objects. And I think there's not many documentation on working with it. But mostly from the whole, where it's called the block API. So I think I would like to see more documentation of it and also how to access some of the have some more control or someone can do behaviors.
There's a dusty dark corner there.
One of the big issues I've seen is broken links. I think there have been a lot of reorganizations of websites such that forum posts or presentations that are even a year old don't go to where they used to anymore. And I don't know what the solution to that is. Right, they come to search the website.
Right. And we've come up with a more permanent location for all those links, so they shouldn't change going forward. Much more.
Yeah, so for the new documentation website, can you make it a whenever I do Google search, then make it a top 7 results.
That is the goal, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are at least 10 others that come from before HDF Group.
It cannot be that expensive to buy the HDF5 keyword. They can come to the top of the stupid Google search. It's not that frequent.
Any other comments about documentation?
Teams meetings.
Yes. We're working. Okay, then I guess performance. I wish Jay was here. But yeah, this is probably the top concern. It's been our concern for the past. I mean, it's probably 80% of our time spent on improving the performance. Even for ECP, we talk about the async fall, the cache fall, the log fall. All those are kind of addressed using those machines, getting better performance out of your code. Subfiling was introduced just for performance reasons. So all those, and multi-data set, it's nice, yes, to have a data set, an API that writes multiple data sets in one call, but that feature is basically for performance, introduced for performance reasons as well. So except for Jordan, Jordan's talk about complex and stuff, that's really only the new feature stuff that's gone into the library that's not performance related in the past 10 or 15 years. So, and especially ECP. I mean, ECP focus was for performance. So, I mean, to address it, of course, we have a daily test performance that we try to monitor. That if we introduce something into the library that slows things down, we try to, notice it and then make sure that doesn't go into a release. And HPC is still struggling because, I mean, to test something at scale to make sure it didn't work. I mean, Quincy and I went back and forth with his latest PR that, yeah, they said that scale didn't perform very well. So we had to go back and rerun stuff. It's very expensive for allocation time to rerun these problems. So and that's a challenge for us is on these big machines, HPC machines, getting time and getting allocation to make sure the performance is still good with new PRs and new features. So I guess with that, I'll open up any other performance concerns, which was better, or it's great, don't change a thing.
And is tiny dwindling percentage of computing today. So performance on other workloads in yarn is like critical. Higher, order of more performance.
This is once again such a so before every release, we conduct a set of users that does ask them specifically test the performance validation and so on. And unfortunately, yes, we had to code release them, so we code them, but the thing that not to run. So maybe this should be kind of the practice should be started and just get volunteers from community to help with the performance testing because they use different test patterns. And especially with as simple as, say, talking to H55 guys and say, okay, you don't see any degradation in your regression testing. You know? Even if it's few seconds, it's indication. Maybe critical, maybe not, but something like this, just testing with other packages. That's HDF what that will also help.
If you have an application, it's always good maybe to run it once in a while with develop and see if you've seen performance. You'll let us know about it before it's actually released and becomes a problem for you. So it's always good maybe if you have an application and you really care about performance, just to check out the latest develop when it hopefully works and monitor the performance and make sure it's still good for you.
Yeah, that outsourcing idea was really valuable. And right with this, though, I mean, I'd like to hear about it sooner, right? So there's a way to get the cycle going of people who can contribute a little bit of their allocation to run some develop and say, hey, by the way, sometime in the last month, something that, so instead of waiting 6 months or a year, really big thing.
Especially if you have a unique application like AI, where we're not testing performance for AI, I don't think at all. So if you have an application that's testing that, we'd love to know about it and say, well, this, yeah, it was good in 1.14 before, and now it's not good in develop. So that's good feedback for us.
So I think that encouraging us to make other comments earlier, if you tap into this and ask them for performance runs against spec. Because it's a nice cross section across HPC.
Okay, we'll move on to attendee discussion topics. So, Seren, you have go ahead. Okay.
Has anybody complained about performance related to AI?
That's Quincy, no. I don't, well, not that I know of. But I don't know if it's heavily. No.
I'm sick of the pyramid for representing the folks from various people within the AI who are like, so.
Can we get some use cases or benchmarks on that so that everybody?
Yeah, I'm still trying to drag real world use cases on them.
Okay. Let's see about those. I think I was just referring. No.
Do you know if H5 bench be amenable to doing AI type, or would it be out of scope for that type of?
So it is in scope. It's like somebody from Germany has integrated nearby with H5 bench and explore this space. I think that is the case. But what we're looking for. Yeah, so there is, years back now, the dark which tries to look at HDF5 as a data format. One of the main things I was studying is, like I presented, most AI workloads don't start with HDF5. So it's actually the start with something else. Then if they have an issue, because of all the overlap happening with all those access patterns, they don't care. But when we look at those applications, we feel like this is really bad IO, switch to HDF5, and that's when they start looking at HDF5. So I think organically, a lot of workloads right now still don't directly use HDF5, and even if they do, they hardly care about it. In terms of IO performance, mostly they care about computation performance still now. But as Suren mentioned, the AI benchmark was built to try different access patterns with HDF5 as one of the formats. It uses H5 basically, which is what all scientists use. Doing the AI. That could be integrated potentially to test and say whether the benchmark essentially allows you to look at IO individually or in a combination with different computations, and so you would potentially look at whether your workload is slowing down or not with that. But yeah, typically that's what ends up happening. When I was a scientist, at least like 4 examples last few years, which typically, and the funny thing is they actually convert their simulation codes to a converter into AI, so-called AI specific formats, just because they don't do exams. Maybe that's part of the problem is not a lot of people are aware of H5. The student from Ireland tried to create a chunk data set with H5 and was not able to do that at scale. So I told them, hey, use the C APIs. That gives you these many more options to correctly do it. So it takes a lot of effort for some people to go through that stack maybe some documentations might help. Integrating benchmarks like, as I said, TLIO or H5 benchmark. Kind of giving examples to the community of how to use H5 and using different frameworks. Like these days, the most popular is PyTorch and you get out of the right? And actually, most of the workloads, though they use these frameworks, they don't write the data flows correctly. So having even sample examples, that's kind of one of the goals of the DLR, is to provide people good sample examples of how to for even NumPy arrays is more of optimization, but we'll talk about that in the context of AI. So,
basically, needs to be somebody in like Stanford staff who can, like, senators doing trial optimized HDF5 analysis, big on a blog post, some good documentation, a video tutorial. It would take an enormous amount of heat off this area.
And honestly, most of my experience is just educating data sectors, easy. And 90% of the problems are solved there. Mostly they overlap well, they do decent enough IO, because they are always in contrast to the computations they're doing, which are also becoming more complex. So that's what they care about. So having good some good baseline the IO NVIDIA data. This is how you should structure your HDF5 file. This is how you should chart it. This is how you should access it. And like these are very standard basic stuff, but if those are given in a very high level documentation that we can quickly test and from an AI perspective, with Python examples, notebooks, that really would help. I think the more getting started.
You mentioned that you keep track of the performance without you do daily performance tests to make sure you weren't going per performance. Do you actually publish without performance without across different versions?
Do you mean when it's publicly available?
Yeah,
it is. Yeah, we should have a link to it somewhere more public. Grafana, yeah. Yep. We just haven't, I don't think we have it published anywhere outside HDF.
Yeah, lastly, because I think it's going to be good to show that how your version improve performance. I mean, good starting point to the landscape app, the scientists to show that you could benefit from reading the your own HDF version, right? Because you know, with landscape HDF is already use 1.8 and right now, and the HDF by default probably to 1.10, 1.12, and they have no incentive to change the rate because the old code they are working at, you don't want to break their application, so you might want to show give them some motivation to switch to newer version. Otherwise, it will never change. Right?
Yeah, and I'll show those graphs. I do some. I take applications and run all versions of HDF5 to plot the performance. So Wednesday's talk, I will present those. But yeah, they should be more forward facing. But yeah, so I can compare all the versions of HDF5 back to 1.6 for certain applications.
Yeah.
So we just need.
Yeah, but Grafana is only testing like develop, right? So it does a PR, it doesn't test all the versions back and
right, but different versions and every chip.
Yeah, I could do that.
It's a very good suggestion. If you want to drop a whole version of it, and that's it. People to version and get people. This is the improvement we can.
Your question?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to know the updates on the ECP features, what's happening, what's going on. It might be just for the community then. I know.
Yeah, so the features developed for ECP, the main feature was subfiling, which is used a lot, at least in the HDF group, where we do a lot of benchmarking to make sure it still performs. We're testing it on Frontier and Perlmutter right now and getting performance numbers. So that is still under active development. We actually just updated with Quincy's latest PR to remove the dependency of Mercury with subfiling. For the balls, we moved them all to our repository where we're now in the process of making it part of our daily testing and then report to CDASH whether they still pass. So we want to keep, so the 3 balls that we're looking at are the async ball, the cache ball, and the log ball. Those are the ones we're maintaining and making sure that they always work with the newest version of HDF5. What else is there? What else? I think that's the main features of the ECP. So there hasn't been any ECP that, there was the Audios fall. The problem was, Jay's not here, but Audios has a problem with the concept of hyperslab, is how to translate it into Audios is not straightforward. So the Audios fall doesn't support any kind of point selection or hyperslab selection. So right there, that's a showstopper for a lot of applications, especially in parallel, where the main mechanism you use to do I/O from a rank is using hyperslab selection. So we're not currently maintaining at all the Audios. We hope to for the Deos ball connector, it wasn't a major focus on with ECP just because it wasn't used on the current machines, but with Aurora coming online, we hope to still somehow maintain that vault connector. But currently it's not being tested either in our locally or in the cloud or on Aurora. That's all in
And you have plans for the next year, goals of the sustainable ECP?
Yeah, so then we'll document it. We'll hopefully have releases of the vols as we release new versions of HDF 5, so they keep in lockstep. And we hope that at least we have 5-year support through the post-ECP funding for supporting that type of activity. So the vol should be supported at least for the next 5 years. So if you adopt, async, and you want to use async in your code, it should work for the foreseeable future. Anything?
The next one is when Jay was saying something about this things I just captured for here. I'll try to fix what he was saying. So he was suggesting to search for best performing defaults and setting them during installation. If we do plan to do it, what are all the defaults we can do? That can shed light on.
In some sense, HDF library was created to please everyone. So, right? So there were defaults that it will work, and there were reasons why metadata caches is 1 megabyte, right? So what we saw during the 25 years of support, where people really have a problem, and how we will solve it. There are data producers who use whatever is necessary for them to quickly write data to the disk. One of the use cases was NPOS, which by mandate has to provide data available in 15 minutes time slot from satellite coming. So they were using satellite, and which they stored as a chunk, and it made perfect sense for them because the whole data immediately on the disk, 15 minutes, it's for the users. Now, depending on access pattern to this data, you will get good performance or you will not get any performance at all. And HDF can be a little bit smarter to understand what users are trying to do. And for example, chunk cache, what we'll be doing, will address some of those issues. Like, for example, the chunk size, when the Swiss request for access to the same chunk, the chunk is compressed, don't detect them. Increase the size of the cache and forward the request. So the approach is thinking that they can be a subset of the defaults that will go for everyone is, I don't think it's one. And really what we need to look at what are the most common problems and generally address within the library, plus of course the summarization. Because whatever searching on default parameters, we should provide methods to easily to change default parameters without recompiling application, right? Just use configuration file or something. So don't search for universal defaults. Make it easy to understand the pattern and adjust automatically, or give users mechanisms to easily override what their binary is doing.
Okay, so what you're saying is maybe for issue find could be for each application or a pattern, come up with some defaults and go with that.
For example, I believe that there are common mistakes, not mistakes, common problems that you user encounter. Metadata, a lot of small access to metadata because it's already the characters having this page location and navigation. Maybe it's for no rate, right? It means making a redesigned chunk cache that it will deal with the use cases, like all use cases that I described. Because some of them will make it faster than reading becomes important. And I'm sure it will eliminate. So the other major use cases that really cause problems and try to address them through combination of, but don't use it for each application or search for universal faults.
One thing just I was thinking, so I think one could be also another way to just think about the problem. If we detect the configuration is incorrect, then
What do you compare against to detect the I don't know. Is this fast? Is this not fast? There's
not the fastest, but there are some community given, let's say, heuristics that you're supposed to use as HDFI users. Could there be any way to say, hey, and you might have to configure this to get potentially better performance? It might not happen. This is more of a, for instance, when ITOS library or task analysis frameworks. When you try to move things between clusters with this kind of frameworks, they don't really kill the application. They just say you might be moving this data from here in the applied static operation cluster to a gather operation on the worker. So they provide you sort of hints in order for users to even know that they can do something about it. What I'm saying is, are there rule of thumbs to be used for chunking, or are there better ways to detect whether an access pattern could be more optimized based on flags? And it may not be on all the time, but there's going to be like a validation.
That's why you know can't tell. Is this fast? It's not fast. I can't tell. Right, and the application for them is a series of calls. This is awesome sauce, man. And for me, it's like up and say, look, your chunk size looks a little small. No, I mean, maybe 20, that's right, it's good. All right, this band looks good, that band looks good.
But I'm saying if you see access patterns not matching certain parameters,
maybe it's awesome for them. That's the problem.
That's what I'm saying. It's not a that's what I'm saying. It's a validation or a suggestion. That's what I'm saying. Out loud. I'm just thinking out loud here, right? So my point is, if we could even getting people that something could be changed that might help them create better configurations for them. Because a lot of people yes.
Like a stack of involved that sees everything going on. And something to say, hey, you know what? I'm seeing some stuff that looks a little hinky here, and maybe you want to go like
look at this documentation, right? They're doing this parametric. It might not be valid. Right.
It's an opt-in, right? They chose to add that involved connector for advice. And it doesn't do anything else except offer advice. It doesn't change anything else on the so motivate them.
That's what John Lucas is looking to, right? That's what John Lucas Paul does.
So do you that's the goal it's going or just state?
I have a thought. Drishti is just heuristics-based approach. And we recently came up with an addition to Drishti called the ION, which is an LLM-based approach to find which may do better. Regarding the chunk size, I have started that work at least with 3 people, and I published 3 papers, but nothing related to solving that. We always said, okay, this is not working, so let's find it. Salvage this work with another paper. So that paper is unsolved.
Can we define, define set of tokens usability? So where I would start next week. Let's define and document use cases where we use code where something is not good. And as I said, for example, accessing chunk that is compressed, you're accessing all the time, right? Then metadata access. And I'm sure you will find that 10 of those use cases can be solved by better solutions that you find library or some documentation. How many use cases in the first place were solved? So we're hearing, oh, it doesn't perform. Do we know what exactly is happening? Why they need some suggestion, which can be. So you have some problem, and so everyone else has this problem, and it's not.
Yeah, so I think part of the problem is for you when you talk about metadata optimizations or chunk caching. Most scientists we talk to don't even understand. So I'm trying to go from a more higher level. Could we build a stupid tool which asks the right question so that it will correctly configure and exercise? That could be another way to think about it. Is in the sense of a prompt based is, hey, how are you accessing your data set? My point is for us to build it as users, we don't even know the question. So my point is could we have still high-level questions that would answer some of the things you said, because that's my experience too, is most of the time it's not really the HDF library, it's just the way you're using it, which is the problem, and it's not us asking the right questions. So that we can fix the configurations. And I have to do a bunch of compiling, do it all over myself to say, oh, this is what we do. It's going to fix it with this configuration. And so my whole thought process here is, I think, maybe a tool which would say, hey, could distill some. It's like a survey problem, right? Where they were trying to give a high-level problem or a question to the user to maybe guide him in certain kind of configurations.
Absolutely. And what I'm saying that the person like completely need to know about all caches and parameters, etc., until they really enter it. But when we're talking about performance, there is really not good evidence what exactly type of access patterns that cause people to, move to that. But, a brokerage part of the user thing. And my gut feeling is working with the users for 25 years, it was really like 10 use cases that can be addressed with the library and versus kind of identification. So if you guys have different experience, it should be documented and kind of decided how it should be solved. But
you could take like the output from the login alternate. Ask people who are having problems. Logging alternate. Shove it through an element. Figure out, what are the problems that are common to these kinds of I/O patterns that I'm seeing there in these logs with these kind of problems with people, and then you at least begin to reason about it.
But then you will have this perception that those are parameters that you always have to use, but it will be only for this application, only for this machine, and it's not scalable in this sense. So library should be more.
There should be a config file that you can set.
I think that goes to Jay. If Jay was here, I'm sure he would say yes. I mean, this is the reason why scientists don't want to think about all this. So if we can make it simpler, either by having AI somehow magically tune parameters for them, I mean, that's all the better. But I don't know how to get away. I don't know how Audios does it because they only have a few APIs.
We said, we can't tune it each machine.
Right. So they hand tune each machine. Yes, so they're very involved in getting good performance. But I don't know how we're going to get out of the business of not doing that.
Something that what I understand of that is a lot of them are not presented in a way that's useful to application users. Right? Why is the chunk cache given in units of megabytes? Why is it not in units of chunks?
You don't know how big your chunks are, how much memory you're going to eat up. Right?
Well, once you load it in the cloud, you know how big the chunk is. Why is the chunk cache not at least one chunk?
Your source code. I don't know what your source code. Okay, that's the whole thing.
Sure, but you have to understand. Yes, on a read of a new file, you look at the size of the chunk, and why can you not adjust some parameters? I mean, a user just doesn't think about that.
I would go even a higher level up, right? When is that unique fly chunk? That is also something people don't know. I have to always explain that to people and then try to like values around the 1 megabyte range because they're working with other systems like cluster or GPFS, and then say, oh, this is the one which works for my application. Let's use that, and that changes depending upon whether they're writes, read after write here. So I'm saying it's something that happens, but my point is they're still having that, as she said, the education of it or coming from a higher level use case of why, when should we thinking about chunk storage might help users do that connect or their.
They want to kind of mashing that together with some of Jay's comments, where if we could get out of the business of having user change source code, right, then we would have a much faster flow. You still have to tweak it, but at least, like he was saying, I didn't modify my code, I just changed the thing underneath the covers, and then smooth integration points. We may have to figure out and get very fine grained. This data set needs this configuration. That data set needs a different one.
Some tools, I don't know if that helps, but some tools in the cloud will create configuration files for a class of workloads. They might not work for everyone.
I mean, it's a class of workloads, but the problem is that in your workload.
But it's starting to my point is give them a class of workloads. Like this is simulation, or this is these kinds of access values with some data based on which we're creating. People can match that with their workloads and say, okay, I don't have to start with defaults. I have a new set of defaults. This is the configuration. And then figure out, these are the parameters to which I figure out whether I have to fix anything or not.
Yeah.
So that might be a more guided approach towards
I'm totally doing this case. The devil will be in the details because, you know, that data said the first 6 IO like this, 7 IO should be in that.
And this is analogous to compiler functions. There's a lot of work that was done. Might be, okay, just give a code, just run all variations of compiler code. One of the projects that was Atlas project, and then Kathy took it as a proving approach called Bebop. So both of them are now kind of created these paradigms that Berkeley has in place for most of the things. So if we come up with that,
Yeah, it's a good time, but I think IO is greedy, right? It takes a lot of time. It's not like a compute kernel where you kind of say, well, this one overall is the best choice to make, even if 5,000 run is sucky. The other 4,000 and then the bridge, and it's cool. Well, kind of sucky in IO land is it's slow, and that counts minutes and hours instead of, you know, 400 might be more.
I think the combination of just give the code whatever you want to do, extract the IOs from it, and then use some knowledge to optimize and reduce that as much as possible using heuristic, and then run somewhat an exhaustive.
The exhaustive approach across million by million data set, that's fine. All the choices.
I don't know, at least in practice, most workloads are workers. They are not that good in terms of their data sets. And if you tell them, hey, you're going to make it for cases. That's what, in the example I actually showed them, they already had that data set. It was the stupidest case. That's why I said this is the best case. But you don't have to do any optimization of the files. Just that they don't know how to use H5.5, right? Because most examples go to C and they get scared because they're AI physics. And then once they reach H5.5, they see a bunch of configuration they don't understand. They don't understand chunking. They don't get to apply what, how to integrate it with everything. So there are a lot of those hurdles before even it comes to configurations. And then having a good set of default configurations to say, hey, this is what you're looking for these guys. It could be very limited, I would say, very special cases, but at least it's a better starting point than
So the committee has been very excited about this as well. It's like, it's a big.
Not a lot of, my point is not a lot of cases of failure that at least I deal with, especially there, which is coupling things with workflow. They are very uniform data sets. They're typically more caring about portability, how do you scale them on multiple GPUs, the data patterns, and all that stuff they won't care about, but they are more than happy to run a pre-processing step and chunk it more or chunk it less. I actually made them do that on the old data set. They were happy to do that. I just gave them a notebook, say, hey, change your paths, play with this configuration to define a good value. These are some of the well-known configurations. So it helps them, but my point is starting having a good base configuration set with good documentation of it. We are good start towards this. Because the last year I presented the intent work. It was a challenge to even, I had good or HDF Group people to help me, but to get out of them, why did you build this configuration? Like, what's the underlying use case with this configuration? And the best answer I would get is, here's the code.
Well, here's the code.
It's the code, what it does. And sometimes it has
to figure out what the committed message was.
so that's what Jay was talking about in terms of a challenge. Even someone wants to do it. It's like I have to get those configurations out. Like NPI and chunking individually have 10 configurations, and we have 10 more. And some of them, I was like, why does it matter after them explaining it? Had no impact on performance to me. So the question is, it's more about, I think, coming back to documentation parameters is, when should I use it? Not that, oh, when you have these processes accessing chunks like that, for people to even get to that notion of chunks and that kind of distributions that these processes hold. So there are a lot of, I think understanding these cases and documenting probably would be even helping people like us who are trying to do this work to help users, build tools to help users to even know what to do. Because right now I just did exploration. Sorry? Yeah, but that's what I did with a lot of scientists there, like at least 2 of them. It's just play with configurations, and even I'm learning on how these things work together. So it's challenging.
Yeah, I think the best practices and book there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I mean, it'd be nice if we did the, field time value. We should change the default to be never. And the collective metadata stuff, I mean, everyone turns it on now. There's no reason, unless they can't, there's no reason not to do that by default, because it just is a performance. Everyone does it now for their code, but no one knows to do it, right? Unless you see presentations or run their documentation.
And having configuration file is a total first step we have to do, because there is no way to document your access. Right. What are the configurations? Everyone has to write it in a single or environment variables. It gets lost in all. And so we have to start with the configurations to say, hey, this is how we would configure HTML file, the config YAML file, whatever it is, I don't care. But the point is having some YAML file says, this is how you configure it. It's a great way to document. Start. So we know what they are doing.
It's audio stuff, right? Set up here what you're going to write. They do so well because you're explaining what you're going to do. So that's why Adios it can perform very well, because the user is informing Adios what they plan to do.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. So even documenting some of the lower level properties that have really help understanding for other people, and I said, figuring out if this configuration is a good starting configuration for them, and then go from there.
I guess the last topic would be, if anybody wants to talk about simpler APIs, know that H5P is a terrible thing to look at. I mean, it's so large. I can see where a beginning user looks at that and says, I don't even know where to start. It's H5P default for me. But any comments about that?
I took a dig at it right recently for the 220 APIs we have for education. And after chatting with all of you guys, you said, okay, let's start with this 20. Because we have no clue what journals does, right? Let's start with this 20 for the sake of workload. And I was using H5Bench to figure out how these work together, individually in isolation, and then pull my head up the little I have to figure out the combination of that, which was a much harder problem because essentially I was brute forcing it. There was no way for anyone to know how would those two properties work together, would it even work or not. And so a lot of the work, at least that was done in that work, was, as Suren said, is figure out what would be the heuristics. It was stupid heuristics to figure out when do I use one parameter over the other. It was a start of the work which was very complex in itself, right? And I could not have done it alone. So that's a backstory for everyone to start with.
I don't know what to do in the marketplace because it's like just a scissor drawer.
It's a kitchen thing.
It's you know, like good stuff. Go play with it.
And I don't know which H5P APIs were introduced because, well, it'd be good to have, or because somebody said we need this. So if you get rid of something that someone needs,
you know, need this, and somebody commented on my pull request that gosh, wouldn't it be, you know, problem if some user somewhere wanted to do this other thing. So sure, fine, property list for that, you know.
Yeah. Should there be a community effort for H5 to be improved in an amendment?
Who's using H5? Who in this room is using H5?
I'm making people use in AI community H5 because they are scared of C. If they want to use HDFI, they have to use H5.
AI is using H5, but it's a fair.
H5 typically AI people use it.
Right. So, I mean, why would that fix it? It was just you know, a huge number of optional parameters jam on the end of the Python statements.
Even HDF is not exactly a simple API. It has like low-level stuff, but
no. For instance, this is the funniest thing which happens with HDF5 and H5 for most AI people. They will write open the dataset, do the shape and assume that the IO has happened. And then they will do indexing on it like that. So they won't actually do the colon read thing, which actually does the IO of the entire index. So they will end up with the models no access. So this is a nuance no one would know till one of us runs it and finds, oh, but it's small IO, if you're reading like 500 megabytes of data in one go. And then I realized, oh, this is because they actually forgot to actually read. They just read the data of it. And then they're doing byte by byte indexing as they are reading and then building the sample in memory of 500 megabytes and then sending it. Right? And so,
I mean, to
as we said, there are documentations for people to understand what's a good data load and AI specific. If that's your target, right? If you figure out for AI people what to do, pick 2 data loaders from their PyTorch and then Dolly that I can point to. This is how you correctly do HDFI, right? Would really help because they do this every time I work with an application, I tell them, hey, why don't you use HDFI? They end up coming with a data load business. But this does not make any sense. How the hell will you create this access? Your samples are not like that. So they just show me them and then they basically did that.
yeah, okay.
So these are very common issues can go away if we have good examples.
Yeah, so that's a place for better. We kind of like the cloud optimized, you know. It's just H5 talk.
Or the other way is instead of telling them what to do with the read part, can we just change the other one? And but they're reading it in memory.
No, that does not work either because 2 of the other applications are run out of memory right away because their data sets is terabyte scale and they're doing shared IO. By the multi-threaded use case, we really have those cases, but that's what ends up happening. So it's actually a good use case. Why I tell by the way people use HDFI over non-bias is because NumPy is 5.4 will treat the whole data set individually, and people use just a portion of it. I'm like, the user J5 and just read the portion to me. So that's essentially the use case. Typically, why HDF5 performs much better than NumPy because they are loading a lot more data and not using it. And then doing again the load in some other process and not using it. So they keep doing redundant dialogues. So it's more about, I think, documentation than just making it evolve there.
Well, I'm thinking about similar units starting. I think that it could tie back the big files thing, right? So if you had some standardized for big files, you'd have much less incentive to go play around in the property list drawer and look around for funny things to try. Also, so that might be incentive in that direction. Maybe we want to have anti-property lists. You know, the defaults are the sensible set of things we want, and here's how to turn that off. More so, the concept. Implemented that way, but you know.
It looks like we're about out of time, so we're a little over. So maybe we can just, if people are still around Wednesday afternoon, we can carry on the discussion. But yeah, working group. Oh yeah, the working group, we can also bring it up. And forum, go anywhere.
Yeah, we want to, I mean, we don't, I'm sorry to end this conversation, but yeah, the working group will be a great place to keep talking about these things or start a thread on the forum. When we get a good forum post going, it seems to really help with development. Oh yeah, I'm following my own post. So yeah, we look forward to talking more about this, and we should have time after lunch or maybe one of the lunch groups on Wednesday, especially. We can spend more time with this. But anyway, so we'll wrap up tonight. We're done tonight. Again, same schedule for tomorrow. Breakfast between 8 and 9 a.m. and then content starts at 9 a.m. with the keynote by Quincy. So thanks everyone. Have a good night. Safe travels to wherever you're staying.